Welcome to the Soul Ascendancy channel. I'm so glad you've joined us for today's video. It's not by chance that you're here, and I believe that there's something deep and transformative waiting for you in these words. We're about to explore a topic that touches the heart of many. Why it sometimes feels like God isn't answering your prayers. This feeling of silence can be disheartening, but it is part of a much bigger divine plan, one that is woven with love, patience, and purpose. So, I encourage you to stay with me through this journey, and if this message resonates with you, please make sure to comment silent below and subscribe to the Soul Ascendancy channel for more spiritual insights. We are reminded time and again of God's faithfulness and His perfect timing. In Isaiah 55:8-9, God tells us, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This verse speaks to the heart of the process of waiting. Our understanding of time is limited, and we often feel a sense of urgency, wanting answers now. But God's timing is not bound by our limitations. His ways and thoughts are far greater than our own, and He knows what is best for us. When we surrender to His plan, trusting that He is working behind the scenes, we acknowledge that His timing is always perfect. In the moments of silence and waiting, remember that God is still at work. Psalm 20:14 encourages us to wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart and wait for the Lord. This passage calls us to strengthen the waiting, to find courage and peace in trusting that God will act when the time is right. His love, grace, and peace are with us, guiding us through each moment of uncertainty. There are times when it seems like God isn't answering our prayers. During moments of hardship, when we feel lost or uncertain, His silence can feel deafening. It is in these moments that we often begin to question if our cries are being heard. But what if this silence isn't a rejection or neglect, but rather a crucial part of a grander divine plan? What if this silence is a sacred space where your faith can grow and where God's wisdom is at work in ways you may not fully understand yet? The key to navigating these moments lies in understanding that God's ways are not our ways, and His timing is beyond our limited understanding. When we feel unheard, we must remember that God is always listening, and though His answers may not come as we expect, He is shaping us in ways that align with His higher purpose. In those quiet moments, when it feels like our prayers are unanswered, our faith is tested. James 1:3 reminds us that the testing of our faith produces perseverance, and perseverance will help us become mature and complete. These moments of silence are not wasted. They are forging a faith that will not falter in times of doubt. God's timing does not work according to our human limitations. We often operate within the constraints of time, hoping for immediate responses, yet God's perspective transcends time itself. 11. We are reminded that He makes everything beautiful in its time. The delay we experience in His answers doesn't equate to denial. It is simply God preparing us in our situation for what is to come. Trusting in His divine timing is an act of faith, knowing that His plans far exceed anything we could have imagined. We may also struggle with unanswered prayers when we hold tightly to our own expectations. Many times, we approach God with a specific request, but God's vision for our lives is far broader than we can comprehend. His answers might not align with what we desire, but they will always be in line with what we need. Trusting in God's plan means releasing our control and surrendering to His greater purpose. So it can be incredibly difficult, as we are wired to seek immediate gratification and outcomes that make sense to us. But true faith is not about getting what we want when we want it. It's about trusting that God's way is always the best way, even if it requires waiting and enduring. This waiting period can feel like a test of faith, but in reality, it is a process of refinement. During these times of waiting, we often learn to depend on God in ways we never would if we received immediate answers. It is in the silence that we are drawn closer to Him, deepening our relationship and learning to seek Him for who He is, not just for what He can provide. Our faith becomes more than just a transaction. It becomes a deep, personal connection with our Creator. God desires for us to rely on Him fully, to trust that He is always with us, even in our moments of uncertainty. Silence we experience is not evidence of His absence, but an invitation to grow closer to Him. In the absence of immediate answers, we find intimacy with the divine that could not be cultivated in times of abundance. It is important to remember that God's silence is never a reflection of his love for us. On the contrary, it is often in these quiet moments that we are most aware of his presence. God's love is constant, even when we cannot perceive it. We are not abandoned in our waiting. He is always working behind the scenes, guiding us towards the destiny he has planned for us. And sometimes, when we feel the silence the most, it is because God is doing something in us, shaping our hearts and minds to align with his will. The waiting period is not a punishment, but a preparation. It is God's way of strengthening us, helping us grow in patience, perseverance, and trust. In the process of waiting, we may begin to question whether our prayers have fallen on deaf ears. We may wonder if we have not been heard or if we are somehow unworthy of an answer. But the truth is that God hears every prayer, every cry, and every whisper. C-Team reminds us that if we harbor sin in our hearts, it can create a barrier between us and God. So, it is important to examine the state of our hearts when we feel like our prayers are unanswered. Are we praying with pure motives? Are we seeking God's will above our own? Sometimes, the reason our prayers seem unanswered has to do with our own hearts and whether we are truly aligning ourselves with God's desires for our lives. When we pray, it should not be about manipulating God to fulfill our desires, but about aligning our hearts with his will. God's kingdom is not built on personal gain or self-centered requests. Are we praying for things that will glorify God and advance his kingdom? Or are we asking for things that only serve our own agendas? James 3 teaches us that when we ask with wrong motives, we will not receive. But when our prayers align with God's will, we can trust that he will answer in ways that far exceed anything we could have imagined. It is through surrendering our desires to him that we open the floodgates for his blessings to flow into our lives. The process of learning to trust is not an easy one. It requires us to stand firm even when we cannot see the way ahead. Trust is not built in moments of comfort but in the valleys of waiting. Isaiah 31 reminds us that those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. Trust grows deeper in the silence, in the moments when we don't have all the answers. It is during these times that our faith becomes stronger, not because of the answers we receive, but because we choose to trust in God despite the silence. So, dear ones, as you wait and wrestle with unanswered prayers, remember that God is with you. Even in the silence, he is working. He is shaping you, preparing you, and guiding you toward a future that is beyond your comprehension. Embrace the silence. Trust in his timing. Your prayers are being heard. And though the answers may not come when you expect, know that God's plan is always unfolding for your good and his glory. It is in these moments of silence that God is working most profoundly, though we may not always perceive it. His stillness isn't abandonment, nor is it a sign of absence. Often, it is a tender invitation to lean into the unknown and trust that even when we cannot trace his hand, his heart is unwavering, deeply committed to our well-being. So, in the silence, in the waiting, we must embrace the tension of not having immediate answers, for it is in this tension that faith grows. It stretches us, refines us, and teaches us to trust more deeply. Chosen ones, trust that God is still working, even when he is silent. This is not a time to despair, but a moment to be reassured that his presence is near. The silence isn't a sign that you've been forgotten. It is God drawing you closer to him. It's a moment where he asks you to trust not just in his actions, but in his character. As he remains silent, he is inviting you to deepen your relationship with him, to seek his presence not just for the answers, but for the relationship itself. When we are faced with silence, we are often led to question, why am I waiting? Why has my prayer gone unanswered? It's in this waiting that we are asked to recalibrate our understanding of what God's will truly is. How often do we pray from a place of desire, not from a place of divine alignment? We may ask for things that seem good to us, but God, in his infinite wisdom, knows what is best for us. He sees the end from the beginning, the path we are meant to walk, and he is more concerned with our character and growth than with fulfilling our immediate desires. The silence can be a reminder that sometimes what we want isn't what we truly need. God may withhold what we ask for, because he has something better in mind, something more aligned with our destiny. In these moments of silence, we must surrender our own understanding and trust in God's perfect timing. Sometimes we pray, and the answer doesn't come right away, because we are still in the process of realigning our hearts with His will. His silence isn't a rejection of our prayers, but a refining process. He is shaping our hearts to be in alignment with His purpose, and that takes time. It takes trust. It takes faith. God's timing is impeccable, and His wisdom far surpasses ours. There's also a divine protection at work in God's silence. He sees dangers that we cannot see, and His silence may be a shield, a divine protection from unseen threats. When we pray, we often ask for what we think we need. But God, with His eternal perspective, sees the pitfalls and distractions that could derail us. An unanswered prayer may be God's way of protecting us from harm, even when we cannot see the danger ahead. It's in the silence that God may be shielding us, redirecting us, and positioning us for something greater than we can imagine. So, chosen ones, do not fear the silence. In fact, embrace it. It is in this quiet, still space that God is doing the most profound work in your life. His silence doesn't mean He has forgotten you. Quite the opposite. It means He is drawing you nearer to Him, inviting you to trust Him more deeply. The silence is an invitation to intimacy, a time for you to lean into His presence and rest in the assurance that He is still on the throne, still working, still moving, and still faithful. When the silence feels overwhelming, when the waiting feels long, remember this: God is crafting something beautiful in your life. Trust that your prayers have not fallen on deaf ears. He hears you. He is working all things together for your good. His perfect will be accomplished in His perfect time. And when the answer comes, it will be more than you could have ever hoped for. So in the meantime, trust in the process. Trust in His timing. Trust in His love. For even in the silence, God is doing something magnificent. He is working behind the scenes, orchestrating the events of your life and preparing you for the blessings that are on the horizon. Trust that in the silence, He is shaping you into the person you were always meant to be. Trust that every moment of waiting, every moment of silence, is part of His divine plan for your life. So, if you are in a season of silence, if you are waiting for an answer that seems to never come, remember this: you are not alone. You are not abandoned. God is with you, and He is working in the silence. Trust that His timing is perfect, His love is unfailing, and His plans for you are good. Embrace the silence, embrace the waiting, and trust that God is at work in ways you cannot yet see. Chosen ones, let your faith rise in the silence. Let your trust deepen, knowing that God is still moving, still working, still loving you, even when you cannot hear His voice. His silence is not a sign of abandonment. It is an invitation to draw closer to Him. So, trust in His heart, trust in His plan, and trust in His love. For in the silence, God is doing something beautiful, something powerful, something that will change your life forever. As you wait, know this: you'll find your trust is growing. And when the silence breaks, the answer will come with a grace and power that you could never have imagined. So, chosen ones, let your hearts rest in His perfect timing, for He is faithful and His promises never fail. Comment silent below if you believe in the power of God's silence, and don't forget to subscribe to the Soul Ascendancy channel. Stay encouraged, chosen ones. God is working, even in the silence. In moments when we feel lost, it is so easy to believe that we are invisible or that our struggles are beyond understanding. But I want you to hear this today, from the depths of your soul. You are seen, you are loved, and you are never alone. The quietness, the silence that you may be experiencing now, is not the absence of God's presence. It is a space He is preparing for you. Just because you don't hear His voice clearly or see the answers you long for, doesn't mean He isn't working on your behalf. Just in His perfect timing. God's love, His peace, and His wisdom are always available, even in moments of silence. When the world feels loud and overwhelming, when the weight of your burdens becomes too heavy to carry, remember that you are held by a love that cannot be shaken. His gaze is upon you, even when you cannot see Him. His presence is with you, even when you feel as though He is distant. You are not invisible. You are seen by the one who knows you better than anyone else. He knows every part of you, your fears, your struggles, your desires, and your dreams. He knows you deeply, beyond what anyone else could possibly understand. When life seems uncertain and the road ahead feels unclear, take a deep breath and surrender. This moment, this season of waiting, is not a period of abandonment, but a season of preparation. Trust that God is laying the groundwork for something greater than you could ever imagine. His ways are not our ways, and His timing is not our timing, but rest in the truth that He is always faithful. The waiting is part of His plan, shaping you into the person He has destined you to be. Even when the heavens feel silent, God is moving. He is working, and He is preparing something good. I want to remind you today that no matter what you face, there is power in your persistence. Keep going. Keep praying. Keep trusting. Your persistence, your unwavering faith, will unlock doors that you could never open on your own. And when you feel like your prayers are unanswered, when you feel like your cries go unheard, remember that God's silence does not mean He is absent. He is with you in the silence, working things out behind the scenes in ways you cannot yet see. This journey of faith is not a straight line. It is a winding road filled with unexpected turns and detours. But each twist and turn, each obstacle, is preparing you for something greater. It is easy to be discouraged when things don't go according to our plan. It's easy to lose hope when the results don't match the effort we put in. But you must remember, God is not bound by the limitations of time or circumstance. His plan for your life is unfolding perfectly, even when it seems delayed. Trust that He is working all things together for your good. There is beauty in waiting. In the moments of quiet, in the silence, God is speaking to your heart. He is teaching you patience, trust, and surrender. Every challenge you face is shaping you, making you stronger and more resilient. It is in the waiting that you learn to trust, not in your own strength, but in His. When you have no answers, when you don't know which direction to go, turn to Him. He is the guide, the lamp to your feet, the light to your path. This is not just about waiting passively, but actively choosing faith in the midst of uncertainty. It is about trusting when you cannot see the way forward. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who made the blind see, who raised the dead to life, is the same God who is with you now. There is nothing impossible for Him. He will not leave you where you are. His plans for you are far greater than anything you could ever imagine. Take a moment to reflect on the silent spaces in your life, the times when you felt abandoned or forgotten. Now look at those moments through the lens of faith. See them for what they truly are moments of preparation, moments where God is working behind the scenes. He is weaving together the tapestry of your life, and though you may not see the full picture yet, trust that every thread is being woven with purpose and intention. There is nothing wasted in His plan. When we face trials and challenges, it can be tempting to question God's goodness. We may wonder if He's forgotten us or if He's distant. But I want to encourage you, to remind you that God is always with you. Even when you don't feel His presence, He is there. And in His perfect timing, He will reveal the fruits of your waiting. Trust in His process. Trust that He knows what's best for you, even when it doesn't make sense. His ways are higher than ours, and His timing is always perfect. So today, take a moment to pause and breathe deeply. Inhale the peace that comes from knowing that you are not alone in this journey. Surrender your doubts, your fears, and your worries to Him, acknowledging that you don't have to carry the weight of it all by yourself. Let go of the constant need to control every aspect of your life. Release the anxiety of having to plan every step, and instead, place your trust in God's hands. Allow Him to take the lead, knowing that He is faithful, and His plans are far better than anything you could orchestrate on your own. Even when the road ahead seems uncertain or unclear, when the future feels foggy or you cannot see the next step, trust that God is guiding you. He is not distant. He is right beside you, walking with you every step of the way. His presence is your constant companion, and His wisdom is available to you whenever you need it. You are not required to know all the answers. You are simply asked to trust Him with your heart, your dreams, and your future. His love surrounds you in every moment, unchanging and steadfast. No matter what you're going through, His love is constant and unwavering. His grace is more than sufficient for every challenge you face, for every moment of uncertainty, and for every struggle. When you feel weak, His grace strengthens you. When you feel inadequate, His grace reminds you that you are more than enough because of His love for you. His peace is available to you, even in the midst of the silence and stillness. It's not a peace that comes from external circumstances or from having everything figured out. It's a peace that comes from knowing that God is in control, that He has already gone ahead of you and is making a way where there seems to be none. In those moments of waiting, in those times when everything around you feels still or uncertain, His peace envelops you like a warm, comforting blanket. It calms your heart and quiets your mind, reminding you that you are safe, that you are loved, and that everything is unfolding according to His perfect plan. So today, choose to release your burdens and allow God to carry them for you. Trust in His timing, trust in His process, and trust that He is faithful to lead you into the future He has prepared for you. Even when you cannot see the way forward, trust that He is already there, waiting to reveal it to you when the time is right. Let His peace fill you, and let His love surround you, knowing that in His hands, everything is exactly as it should be. I encourage you to rest in His presence today. Let go of your anxieties, your striving, and your need to understand every step. Trust that He is leading you to a place of peace, healing, and restoration. His silence is not a sign of abandonment, but a sign of His faithfulness and His promise to bring you through every trial stronger, wiser, and more rooted in His love. As you go through your day, remember that you are seen by the One who loves you more than you could ever comprehend. You are never invisible to God. You're always in His care. And when you feel lost or uncertain, take a moment to pause and reflect on His promises. Let His peace fill your heart, knowing that He is with you in every moment. His love is unshakable, and His plan for you is always good. And so, I ask you today, my friend, to comment silent below if you are willing to surrender your doubts and trust in God's timing. I encourage you to subscribe to the channel, Soul Ascendancy, as we continue to share messages of hope, love, and faith together. Trust in His plan, rest in His peace, and remember that even in the silence, God is working. As we sit here today, reflecting on the divine grace that continually surrounds us, it is important to pause and remember that no matter the challenges or the trials we face, we are not alone. The journey through life often leads us down paths that seem uncertain, dark, and confusing. But if we have the eyes to see, we understand that God is always with us, even when the heavens appear silent. We live in a world where the pace of life is fast and the noise is constant, but in the stillness and the quiet of our hearts, God's presence is ever near, ever present. His love does not falter, His mercy does not fail, and His faithfulness remains. And as we walk through this life, it is critical to remember that our circumstances do not define us. His love for us does. It is this love that sustains us through every season, whether we find ourselves in a time of waiting or in a time of abundance. There is something profoundly sacred about the act of waiting, a concept that many of us struggle to grasp fully in the context of our fast-paced, instant gratification world. We have become accustomed to immediate results, whether it's from technology, food, or even our relationships. Our society pushes us toward faster, more efficient ways of living, where the value of patience seems diminished. Yet, the periods of waiting in our lives should not be seen as periods of inactivity or wasted time. Instead, they are sacred moments that God has ordained for a purpose. These moments are not just idle pauses. They are part of His divine plan to shape us, refine our faith, and prepare us for the blessings that He has already set aside for us. In the midst of waiting, we are not abandoned or forgotten. God uses this time to draw us nearer to Him, fostering a deeper dependence on His presence and a richer understanding of His will for our lives. When we wait patiently, we're not simply biding our time, but we are also cultivating a closer relationship with the Creator. Our reliance on His wisdom grows as we acknowledge that we cannot control every aspect of our lives, but must trust in the unfolding of His perfect plan. As we place our faith in His timing, we come to recognize that His ways are higher than our own, and His timing is never too early, never too late, but always exactly right. The waiting process, though often uncomfortable, is an invitation for us to grow spiritually. It is during these moments of pause that our hearts are stretched and our faith is tested. Waiting can reveal to us areas of impatience, doubt, or fear, but it also opens the door for these emotions to be refined and purified. We learn to trust in God's wisdom over our own, and we learn to let go of the need for immediate results. The season of waiting becomes a time where we align ourselves more fully with God's will. surrendering our desires and our expectations to His greater purpose. In this sacred space of waiting, God works in ways that are often unseen, preparing us for the next phase of our journey. What we may view as a delay or a detour in our lives is actually an essential part of God's plan to develop our character and to equip us for what lies ahead. Waiting teaches us to have faith, to persevere, and to trust that God is always working, even when we cannot see the outcome. It is not a time to be anxious or to fret, but rather, it is a time to embrace the quiet moments of spiritual growth and alignment with the will of the Father. As we wait, we are transformed. We may not always understand the reasons for our waiting, but we can rest in the assurance that God is working behind the scenes, preparing us for a future filled with hope, purpose, and fulfillment. Through the waiting, we are made ready to receive what God has in store, not just because we have patiently endured, but because we have allowed ourselves to be shaped, refined, and molded in His perfect time. The waiting is not wasted. It is a powerful and transformative season in our spiritual lives. While waiting, we may experience discomfort, doubt, and frustration. The silence can feel heavy, and it may seem as though our prayers are not being heard. But in those moments, we must remember that God's silence does not mean He is absent. It is often in the silence that He is working most profoundly, preparing our hearts and minds for what is to come. There is a depth to God's silence that goes beyond what we can comprehend. It is not the absence of His voice, but the presence of His peace, a peace that surpasses all understanding. This peace does not come from circumstances, but from knowing that God is in control, that His plans are far greater than our own, and that His timing is perfect. It is easy to become discouraged when we do not see immediate results, but we must remember that God's perspective is eternal. He sees the bigger picture, the one we cannot yet understand. And in His perfect wisdom, He knows when to answer. It is in His timing, not ours, that He brings the fulfillment of His promises into our lives. Sometimes, the answer to our prayers does not come in the form we expect, but if we trust in His ways, we will see that His answer is always better than anything we could have imagined. This is a crucial lesson for us to learn. To trust in God's timing, even when it does not align with our own desires or expectations. His ways are higher than our ways, His thoughts higher than our thoughts. There is a divine purpose in every season of life, and every moment of waiting is a part of that purpose. We may not always understand why we are in a particular season, but we can trust that God is using it to prepare us for what is next. We must embrace the season we are in, even if it is uncomfortable, knowing that God is faithful to complete the good work He has started in us. It is easy to forget that God's timing is perfect when we are overwhelmed by the pressures and demands of life. We live in a world that is constantly moving, constantly demanding our attention, and it can be hard to find peace amidst the chaos. But the peace that God offers is not dependent on our circumstances. It is a peace that is rooted in the knowledge that He is sovereign, that He holds all things in His hands, and that He will work all things together for our good. This peace transcends understanding because it comes from the one who knows us intimately and loves us unconditionally. In moments of waiting, it is essential that we surrender our desire for control. We cannot force God's hand, and we cannot make Him move on our timeline. What we can do is trust that He knows what is best for us, and that His plans are always better than our own. It is in surrendering to His will that we find true freedom. We are no longer bound by the expectations we place on ourselves or the pressure to make things happen. Instead, we are free to rest in His sovereignty, to trust in His perfect timing, and to wait with hope and anticipation for the good things He has prepared for us. Patience is a quality that many of us struggle to embrace, especially when life does not unfold on our terms or according to our timeline. We live in a world that is often impatient, where everything seems to be moving at a rapid pace, and instant gratification has become the norm. Yet, patience is not just a passive state of waiting. It is an active, powerful force that works deeply within us. It is a fruit of the Spirit, something that grows and develops as we walk with God and trust in His process. It teaches us the vital lesson of trusting in something greater than ourselves and acknowledging that God's timing is not just perfect but also intrinsically good. The difficulty of patience lies in our natural tendency to want things to happen quickly, to take control of situations, and to bypass the discomfort that often accompanies waiting. However, true patience teaches us to resist the urge to rush through life and to trust that God is in control, even when things do not happen the way we expect or want them to. Rather than experiencing anxiety, fear, or frustration during times of delay, patience invites us to approach waiting with a sense of peace and trust. It encourages us to release our worries and our desire for immediate results, knowing that God is orchestrating everything according to His perfect will. This period of waiting, though sometimes challenging, is a time of deep spiritual growth. While it may feel like nothing is happening, God is, in fact, working within us. His purpose in allowing us to wait is not to withhold good from us, but rather to refine us and mold our character. Waiting is not wasted time. It is an opportunity for us to develop virtues like patience, trust, and resilience. It is a chance to surrender our own plans and desires, placing them in God's hands and trusting that His ways are better than ours. In the quiet moments of waiting, God is often doing the most transformative work within our hearts, preparing us for the future He has destined for us. Through patience, we learn to let go of our anxieties and accept that God's plan is not just about the destination, but the journey. The process of becoming who He has called us to be is far more valuable than any immediate answer to our prayers. In this time, He is shaping us into stronger, more faithful individuals, ready for what He has in store. We must also remember that while we wait, we are not idle. Waiting is not the same as doing nothing. In fact, it is often during the waiting period that we are called to continue pursuing God's will for our lives, even if we do not yet see the full picture. This means continuing to walk in faith, continuing to trust, and continuing to serve, even when we do not have all the answers. It is during this time that God is working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, opening doors, and orchestrating events in ways that we cannot yet comprehend. Our role is to remain faithful, to keep moving forward in the direction He has called us, and to trust that He is working everything out for our good. While we wait, we must also learn to trust in God's faithfulness. His word promises that He will never leave us or forsake us, that He is with us in every season of life. This is a promise that we can hold on to, especially when the waiting seems long and the silence feels deafening. God's faithfulness is unwavering. His promises are sure, and He will do what He has said He will do. Even when we cannot see the way forward, we can trust that He is already making way for us, that He is already working all things together for our good. Finally, we must remember that the process of waiting is not just about the end result. It is about the transformation that occurs within us as we wait. Every season of waiting is an opportunity for growth. It is an opportunity to deepen our relationship with God, to strengthen our faith, and to become more like Him. The waiting is not in vain. It is a part of the journey, a part of the process that shapes us into the people He is calling us to be. And when the time is right, when His perfect timing arrives, we will see the fruit of that waiting, a fruit that is far greater than anything we could have imagined. So, as we continue in this journey of faith, let us trust in God's perfect timing. Let us wait with patience, knowing that He is working all things for our good. Let us surrender our need for control, knowing that His plans are always better than our own. And let us find peace in the waiting, trusting that God is with us, guiding us, and preparing us for the future He has for us. As we come to the end of this reflection, I invite you to take a moment to pause and reflect on your own journey. What are you waiting for? What promises are you holding on to? Are you trusting in God's timing, or are you trying to force things to happen on your own timeline? Take a moment to surrender your plans to God, to trust in His perfect timing, and to wait with hope and anticipation for the good things He has prepared for you. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to comment silent below and share your thoughts. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the Soul Ascendancy channel. We are on this journey together, and I am excited to continue growing in faith and understanding with you. Thank you for being a part of this community. May you experience God's peace, His presence, and His perfect timing in your life today.